First, I want to thank Vernon for the invitation to be here. I'm going to tell you a little story. You know, in 1986, I joined the New York City Police Department. And for those of you that have been to New York City, know a little bit about it. When I came out of the academy, I had a foot post on West 42nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenue. One block. One block. And whether you worked a day tour, an afternoon tour, or a midnight tour, it didn't make any difference. The activity was the same. For 8 hours, I ran from one end of that block to the other. Man with a gun, robbery in progress, shots fired, somebody was stabbed, somebody raped in a theater, somebody thrown off a building, somebody pushed under a train. 8 hours a day, every single day. That was my tour of duty. I went to plain clothes. I had I had hair, period, but it was long at the time. Very long. It was down the middle of my back. I had 7 diamond earrings. I had a big goatee. My job was to run around New York City, Times Square, Manhattan, in a yellow cab looking for guns. That's all we did. New York City had the highest crime rate in the country. We had a murder rate that was over 2,200 per year. I want you to think about that for a second. We had more murders in New York City than LA, Chicago, Atlanta, Baltimore, and Minneapolis combined today. It was a crime haven for the criminals. And then something happened. In 1992, I went to a dinner for a fallen cop, and I met the former United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He got up on the stage and he talked about what he wanted to do in New York City. And he made one statement that was it meant more to me than anything I've ever heard a politician say when it comes to the realization of what has to happen. And he said these words: no one wants to live, visit, work, or go to school in a place where they're not safe. And until we make New York City safe, nobody's going to come here. Nobody's going to buy real estate here. There will be no economic development. There will be no tourism. Nobody wants it. So think about that, right? You think Apple wants to build a flagship store on the south side of Chicago? No, they don't. 2 years later, that man took over New York City as its mayor. And from day one, he didn't want to know about social services. He didn't want to know about BS. He put every cop that was in the New York City Police Department in the streets. He took cops out of headquarters and civilian jobs and put them in the streets. He hired more cops, the most cops ever been hired in the history of the NYPD. And he sent them on a mission: do your job. You do your job, and I'll be there to support you. And I lived and I worked through that renaissance, through that change. During the course of that, I got a phone call from him that he wanted me to go to Rikers Island. Rikers Island, as most of you or many of you may know, is one of the largest jail systems in the world, the largest in the US. They took in 133,000 inmate admissions per year. When he sent me to Rikers, they were averaging 150 stabbings and slashings per month. It was like a war zone. The daily population was 22,500. In the 6 years I was at Rikers, under the mayor's guidance, we reduced inmate-on-inmate violence by 93%, reduced overtime spending by 50%, reduced weapons in the institutions by 60%. It was a completely changed system. We took the most violent jail system in the United States and turned it into an international model for efficiency and correction excellence. In August of 2000, the mayor called me up about 11 o'clock one night, and he said, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, you're going to become the 40th police commissioner of the city of New York. Just out of curiosity, anyone in here know who the first police commissioner was in Vernon? You're not allowed to say. He only knows because he hangs with me. Anybody know who was the first? Who said that?
All right.
Teddy Roosevelt. That's right. Wow. Teddy Roosevelt was the first police. So on that Saturday morning, I went to see the mayor at City Hall, and he handed me that shield. It's the same shield that was given to Teddy Roosevelt. During my time as police commissioner, and during the end of the mayor's term in office, we had reduced violent crime in New York City. Took that number, 2,200 murders, we knocked it down by 70%. In the black community, where the violent crime was the highest, murder dropped almost 80%. Violent crime dropped by 65%. It was an unparalleled reduction in violent crime and murder that never happened before Rudy Giuliani, and it's never happened since. So here's what I would say to Atlanta. Here's what I would say to Chicago. Here's what I would say to Minneapolis and Baltimore and all these cities run by Democrats. Don't tell me it can't be fixed, because I did it. And I want to sum up, before I bring up the mayor, I want to sum up like this. I did it as the police commissioner for New York, and the two other police commissioners before me that worked for the mayor. But here's the bottom line. I couldn't have done what I did without his leadership. I couldn't have done what I did without him giving me the guidance, the support, the funding, everything that the Democrats take away from their cities today. That man gave me, which is the reason we were able to change New York City. You can't defund the police. You defund the police, you take away manpower, resources, staffing. You take away the tools that we've tried to give them for the last 30 years to make sure that they don't go out and use their weapons first, their guns first. We've taught them verbal judo and de-escalation tactics. We've given them every non-lethal weapon under the sun. And now, these radical left-wing lunatics, they basically want to defund them and take it all away. Then what happens? Then you have more problems in the communities. And that's not what we want. Nobody knows better how to reduce crime. Nobody knows better how to lead cities. Nobody knows better on how to accomplish, really accomplish, goals and objectives within a government than the former mayor of the city of New York, Rudy Giuliani. And I think it's one hell of a message for Rudy Giuliani being here today to support Vernon Jones, just as I am. That sends a clear message to the people of Georgia. If I believe that Vernon Jones should be the next governor, and Rudy Giuliani is, forget me, but especially Rudy Giuliani, if he believes that Vernon Jones should be the next governor, well, guess what? That's coming from a guy that's probably one of the greatest leaders this country has ever seen. And I know that because during the aftermath, during the attack, and during the aftermath of the attack on September 11th, we were side by side for 3.5 months until the day we walked out of office. There's no greater leader